Mahomes favored to win his third MVP. Here are the odds. Mahomes at 1. Then C.J. Stroud has popped up to number 2. Josh Allen and Joe Burrow tied for 3rd. And then Jordan Love and Lamar tied at 5. So, Coach, we teased it at the top of the show, even though I didn't speak to you. Who's the number 1 threat to Mahomes' MVP chances?
So last year this time, for me, it was Aaron Rodgers. And I would love to be able to pick Aaron Rodgers again. I'm over it. There's too much water under the bridge. There's too much of the.
Rodgers is out.
Yeah, so we're going to take
Remember, Coach,
and I don't love the benefit of the doubt that C.J. Stroud is getting, and I appreciate what he achieved and all the success he had, but I think he's too high. To me, it's Joe Burrow, and Joe Burrow, when he's healthy, not only were they top 5 in almost every single offensive category, but he's the guy that consistently beat Patrick Mahomes. Right? He's 3-1 against Mahomes. There's no level of intimidation there for Kansas City. So it's not just about the MVP. It's also about the guy that has the best opportunity to get over that Kansas City hump.
Look,
I just want to interject real fast, and I'm going to let Brew finish or begin. I just want to say Mangini's kind of so wrong here because he's thinking about it from the perspective of who's like the best quarterback or second best quarterback, and that's not what the MVP is. Right, as LeBron James has famously talked about within basketball, like there's a difference between the most valuable player and the best player, or who's having the best season. So C.J. Stroud, like his whole breakdown of that, I think he's kind of confusing because we know the way how these MVPs are given is not necessarily who's just the best player in the league at that moment, or even necessarily having the best even the best season. So it's a lot more complicated than that. So his answer just honestly confused me.
I think Burrow's not a bad pick. But I'm going to say Burrow, the problem or one of the problems is they always start slow, typically because there's an injury or something in training camp where guys aren't there. And here we go again.
Guy holding out.
Right? You got 2 disgruntled receivers. T. Higgins going to play. I think Chase will play too. But still, if Chase doesn't get paid, who knows where he's at mentally. So I think you have that. And I also think, Coach, I don't think they'll win the division. Like, even the year they went to the Super Bowl, didn't they go 10-6? Was it 10-6? I think they went.
Even with that sweet new hairdo?
Yeah, I'm not feeling the hairdo either.
Okay.
You are.
That is
the Eminem.
I like it.
But, so I think that's why I take Burrow. Josh Allen, I think a lot of people think, and I see it seems to be set up for him to be a one-man show, right? But when they went 5-0 down the stretch last year, his numbers weren't huge. He only threw for more than 240 yards once. He had 5 touchdowns, 5 interceptions in the last 5 games. So I think they'll win games, but his numbers could be, I'm not sure where they'd be. So I'm going to take him out. Lamar, there's going to be voter fatigue unless he just does something we haven't seen before. So I'm taking those guys out. And, Coach, I am going to go with C.J. Stroud. Because I think he's obviously got momentum.
I thought you were going to say Aaron Rodgers when you.
No. He's got momentum coming off his rookie year, right? He's got a very good team, but I don't think people fully believe in it. Like his receiving core with Nico Collins, Tank Dell, now you add Stephon Diggs. That's a great core, but I don't think people necessarily look at it that way. Like, the only big name is Diggs. He's older. He's new. So I just think that C.J. has a lot going for him. They're going to win that division. I'd be surprised if they don't win their division. And so I think C.J. is going to be the toughest competition.
All right,
Okay, so to me, this is like kind of very easy. And so again, that's why I'm not looking at it who's the best quarterback. Because, we want to start talking about that there should be a head of the C.J. Strouds of the league. Like, I totally get that argument, and it makes sense. And that's what Mangini was kind of speaking to, but I don't think it's relevant for the MVP because you also got to think about who's going to be the best team as well. And so I think for the most part, the MVP will be given to the number 1 seed, unless there's like something outrageous, like clearly, like I don't even know, like the Panthers. Somehow Bryce Young wills the Panthers to win the division or something like that, and then people will be so impressed. But I don't obviously foresee that coming. So I think it's really going to be who has the number 1 seed, And is that quarterback playing great and at the top of his game? And if he is, to me, that's who it's going to be. There's tremendous amount of momentum behind CJ Stroud, and he's so supported by the Houston Texans that it's not hard to imagine that the Texans could have the number 1 seed. And if the Texans have the number 1 seed and CJ Stroud is at, behind center, it's a wrap. MVP right there, right? Unless my other dark horse, not even a dark horse, my other favorite is Jordan Love. I think if the Packers are the number 1 seed in the NFC and they're beating up on the 49ers and the Eagles and the Lions, and I'm not saying that they're playing all those teams, so when I say beating up, just mean in general in terms of numbers and wins, and they're the number 1 seed and convincingly, and Jordan Love is continuing that momentum as he from last season, MVP. He's got all the momentum as well, signing a massive contract, played unbelievable at the end of the last season as well as in the playoffs. It's just momentum, and the media, which is most importantly when we're talking about the MVP, it's what are the conversations we're going to be having. Even if Joe Burrow is having a really great year, or even Josh Allen, if the Texans and the Packers are fighting for the number 1 seed, I mean, they're going to be dominating the media and the attention, and people are going to love them and love to talk about them. So to me, that's why, and I said this actually months ago, that my top picks for MVP are going to be Jordan Love and CJ Stroud. I just see that I just think that they're both going to have big years, and I think their teams are both going to be highly, highly, highly competitive. I think Mahomes for him to win his 3rd MVP, because he has momentum too, right? Coming off of 2 Super Bowl wins. But there's also going to be some fatigue, but I don't know, because there is legendary building with Mahomes. People want to be able to crown him the GOAT, and so getting him another MVP is definitely something that it feels like voters also, the media as a whole also wants to do. They kind of want to speak it into existence, even though it doesn't really need to be spoken into existence because Mahomes can do it himself. But I do think Mahomes would need to have a pretty unbelievable year, a top year in his career, as well as having the number 1 seed. We would have to be like, those are the Kansas City Chiefs. That's the Patrick Mahomes that we remember. We all forgot about what he's capable of doing because of the down year last year, but my God, it's can't miss TV again. Who's going to be able to stop the Chiefs? Like, the only way that he can win the MVP is if the whole season we're just talking about who on earth can stop the Chiefs, right? Like, they're just such a high-powered team and a high-powered offense. Anything short of that, I just don't see it. I just think if it's even close, then it will go to the CJ Stroud. It will go to the Jordan Loves. Like, that's where I'm seeing it. And I think some of the other quarterbacks, it's harder because if Jalen Hurts is balling out and playing great with the Eagles, unless he's kind of having an individually historical year, but if he's just having like a similar year to what he had, which was a great year with the Eagles when he went to the Super Bowl, I don't think that will be good enough, because I think people will just say, well, yeah, of course, look how great Saquon is doing, look how great AJ Brown is doing, Kellen Moore is dialing up great plays. Like, I think he won't get as much of the credit for it, kind of very similar to what happened with Brock Purdy. And that's why also, if the 49ers are back to in the number 1 spot and Brock Purdy's continuing to put up great numbers, unless Debo goes down and Christian McCaffrey goes down and he's still putting up those numbers, I don't see Brock Purdy getting it. And kind of same thing with Jared Goff. Even if the Detroit Lions are the number 1 seed and you got Jared Goff playing great, I wonder if it would go to Jared Goff. Like, it feels like a lot of people want to give credit to the team and the roster as a whole rather than say Jared Goff. So again, the MVP is not about who's even playing the best or who's the best. It's kind of like, where's the attention going? Where, who do people think is actually responsible for this? Who do we think is actually doing the most, and who's having the most success collectively, not only individually, but also from a team perspective? So I'm trying to think if there's anyone else. I mean, maybe technically Tua, but again, people really just praise the coach and the roster. It's just like, I don't know what someone like a Tua could possibly do. He would probably have to rush for like 1,000 yards, since they can't, credit the team or the, or the roster or the coaching for that matter. Like, that's why it's like so much easier to give it to, say, a Lamar, because it's just like, well, look what he's also doing with his legs. And it's like, people love that. And I think Josh Allen, the only way that he wins the MVP is if he has the number 1 seed with the Bills. And I don't think the Bills will have the number 1 seed. I think Josh Allen could ball out. I think you can make the argument that Josh Allen is an MVP candidate every single season because he's that good and that important to the Bills and does every single thing he can for the Bills and does more for his team probably than any other quarterback. But I think they would have to have the number 1 seed for Josh Allen to be able to get it. And I'm just not so sure that the Bills will have the number 1 seed. And so I think it's realistic that the Packers or the Texans can actually have the number 1 seed. So I think they're probably the biggest threat to Mahomes. But honestly, I'll just say this at the end of this clip. It doesn't really matter to me, the whole MVP conversation, because it's like so convoluted and tough and random media members get votes while others don't. And there's so much bias involved and favoritism, as well as like, you know, if you believe Patrick Mahomes is the GOAT, then you want to vote for Mahomes to be the MVP every single year. And it's just like it's a wonky award, you know, it really is. And I think because people are also probably saying, well, what about Lamar Jackson? And it's like, I do think that there's going to be the fatigue with Lamar Jackson. Not to mention, I think people feel dumb for voting Lamar Jackson the MVP and then having him lose in the playoffs. Like they feel weird about that. They feel like, you know, he didn't play good enough against the Chiefs. Maybe he wasn't deserving of the MVP. Maybe it was actually Patrick Mahomes deserving of the MVP. So I think Lamar Jackson would have to have like a truly record-breaking year and have the Ravens at the number 1 seed for him to even remotely have a chance. But those are just my thoughts. I would absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think? Who do you think the biggest threat is to Mahomes' 3rd MVP? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions, let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I would absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you next time.